Here we are in mid-May 2007, and the news from Iraq isn't any better. If anything, it's worse. And Americans keep dying, Iraqis keep dying. The estimates are all over the board as far as how many Iraqis have died, but 100,000 is a conservative estimate. And if that number died in the United States, it would be 1 million, that percentage. You think we'd be pissed off if 1 million Americans died because some invading army came in here and occupied this country? But we're all just seem to be getting numb to the news. I mean, every day there's a car bomb. Every day more Iraqis die, and pretty soon people just quit reading the papers. They quit talking about it. They just want to get on with their lives. Yet there's Americans over there facing life and death decisions every second. We ought to be doing something to bring this to an end.
Part of the scary part of it is that the name Al-Qaeda just keeps getting thrown around. Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda. Well, those are the guys that did 9/11. Right, those are the guys that did 9/11. But they have nothing to do with, and had nothing to do with, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Al-Qaeda in Iraq is the creation of the Bush administration. When they went in and they dismantled the Ba'ath Party, a good number of the Baathists were trained military. They were the reserve units. They were the vaunted prestige elements of the Republican Guard. And they were policemen. They were investigators. And now they have taken on a new name. They're Al-Qaeda in Iraq. So a lot of Americans are trapped into this notion that we're over there fighting Al-Qaeda. But it's not the Al-Qaeda that did 9/11. You have to remember, Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein were the worst enemies in the world. Saddam Hussein was the one leader of a country that not only was he opposed to the Islamic fundamentalists, he despised them. He cut them out at the roots. There are stories of 6-year-old girls going to school with copies of the Quran that were never seen again. And then their families disappeared. He took a hard line on the idea of religion in any way having any role in governing. He was adamantly opposed to it. So Osama bin Laden despised Saddam Hussein. It wasn't until we started talking about going into Iraq that there were supposedly connection between the two that said if this happens, and I remember that there was one tape released by Osama bin Laden that said that if it does happen, that we would come to the aid of their Muslim brothers in Iraq. But we created, the American presence created the new Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. That came from a school, a multi-billion-dollar school called George Bush University. And that is all the money that we've spent, the lives that we've destroyed over there. And those are the people that are our new frontier of terrorists. Those are the people that George Bush created to despise Americans.
Yeah, I remember when we first went into Iraq, and a few cynics said, I think the Bush administration is going in there for the oil. And I really dismissed that. I mean, I just couldn't believe that about our government. But there were no WMDs. There were no terrorists in Iraq who had attacked us. Then he said we were going to try to build a democracy there. Well, that's just a fool's errand. I mean, there is no way that we can force a democracy on these people. We're going to try to make all these warring tribes live together in peace. Now we won't leave until everybody's nice to us. And now we won't leave because Al-Qaeda's there. Well, guess why Al-Qaeda's there? Because we're there. So now we can't leave because we're there? That's what it amounts to. That means we can never leave. And I really think that's Bush's plan. We can never leave because a regime that's not friendly to the United States will take control of Iraqi oil. They're the second largest oil supplier in the world. And if that happens, we can't have that oil. And of course, we have done absolutely nothing to economize here and to make ourselves independent from foreign oil. So we are totally dependent. So we have to stay in Iraq, and that's why young American women and men keep dying.
And here's a very, very good point of history, very, very briefly. Remember, there were tax cuts. There were tax cuts for a certain class of automobiles that came out under the Bush administration and when there was a Republican Congress. And that was, it had to be a truck, and it had to be the heaviest thing on the road. It had to be used, it had to be a gas guzzler, and that was the one tax break that has been passed that the average American could own use more gas. Why would
Yeah.
you do that?
It's just a total lack of leadership is what we're talking about. Total lack.